Welcome to Never Mind The Ballots, election countdown. There's 27 days to go. The D-Day truce, it didn't last long. The PM has been forced to issue a grovelling apology for jetting home early for the D-Day commemorations in Normandy. He skipped meetings with other world leaders to do a political interview. This morning he says that was a mistake. Certainly one way of putting it. Labour say it's betrayal. Farage say it's a sign of a PM that just doesn't care. But it's Rishi Sunak's judgment that will be baffling voters this morning. Now I'm joined by very recently former Royal Marines Colonel Alistair Carnes, and now Labour parliamentary candidate in Birmingham Selly-Oak. Welcome to Never Mind The Ballots.
Thank you very much, Harry. Good to be here.
And Ryan Saby, a familiar face on the show, our deputy political editor. Now, Colonel, can I still call you Colonel?
No, ex-Colonel, I'm now a civilian.
When did you leave the Marines?
A week and 1 day ago, so pretty rapid.
Wow. So when did you decide you wanted to be a Labour candidate, and how did you sort of extract yourself from what is presumably a career?
Great question. I mean, primarily for me, it's the ability to enact change, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. I was hoping we'd have a bit of time run till October, November, but obviously everything speeded up, so I made the decision to leave pretty recently. And went all in. And
there's a mechanism, I understand, that if you say you're going to be a parliamentary candidate, you can extract yourself quicker than you would normally be able to.
So there's regulations in place, and the military have been absolutely superb in helping me with that transition really, really fast.
We're going to talk about you and your career and your future in a moment, but first, can I just get your reaction to the big news of this morning, which is that the Prime Minister did a pretty swifty retreat yesterday from Normandy, leaving early from the D-Day celebrations. What do you...
So, I mean, I don't want to get into party politics on this. The reality is it's one of the most important days in the military calendar.
Yeah.
150,000 plus men and women left the shores of this country on 5,000 landing craft for arguably the most important mission operation of the Second World War, liberate Europe. And that requires and needs the respect of both us and the entire country. So leaving early was a mistake, but I'm pretty sure the Prime Minister acknowledges that.
I mean, I just don't understand. I mean, you've worked in Whitehall in advising politicians on sort of military matters. How does something like that?
I mean, Harry, you got all the world leaders there.
Yeah.
This is a monumental event. You know, some really carefully crafted messages from Biden focused at Russia and Putin.
Yep.
And you know, we should have been represented throughout. I'm just really proud that Labour was there and Keir Starmer was there.
Yeah, we've got the pictures of Keir Starmer meeting Zelensky. Obviously, that was a very clear, defining message to the Kremlin. You know, Putin, NFI, our man Zelensky, right here.
It's really important. I was with both John Healey and Keir Starmer on Monday on the defence and security launch. You know, Ukraine is high up on their agenda.
Yeah, you can see Keir Starmer with Zelensky there.
Two great leaders together.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a. I mean, just in terms of party politics, the continuity between, you know, in all likelihood, a Labour government is coming in. Is that message being, said to the Ukrainians that nothing is going to change? Are you concerned there could be a change in policy between our stand fast commitment now?
There'll be no change in policy. If nothing else, there'll be a doubling down on the support of Ukraine, whether that's building up international consensus in Europe, gifting of equipment and capability. So yeah, Labour is fully in behind us.
So, I'm fascinated. You've worked, you've been tell us about your career, first of all. Run us through it, and then we'll talk about your new career in a second.
So, 24 years worth. Joined as a young Marine, lowest rank. Did 4 years as a Marine. Went to become an officer. I've been in the Marines throughout. I've done various different staff jobs. Been every major operation deployment the last 24 years. I've loved it. I've worked with some of the best people in defence, and also the NHS and the police and the fire service.
Favourite bits?
I like being deployed on operations. And I like also, I've been in Afghanistan, I've done various different operations throughout the world. I like, the people I work with is primarily why I stayed in the military, and I loved it.
And the worst bits?
You see some harrowing things when you're in the military, but you also see some amazing things. Camaraderie, friendship, kindness. And so, you know, both come together. Well,
I'm afraid Westminster's going to be a bit of a wake-up call on that front. I'm afraid you're not going to get a huge amount of that. Now, look, my understanding is you worked with some senior politicians as a sort of a military liaison, Natasha. You know the Whitehall side of things as well. You've seen this government up close, then. Is that why you chose Labour?
So I've worked, in sort of the central halls of Whitehall, working for 3 different sector of states. I've got a lot of experience in national security architecture, how it all weaves together to provide that security for the nation. Labour have been absolutely solid on that. It's central to their manifesto. I chose Labour because Labour offers the best opportunity for change after 14 years of Conservative government.
But 5 years ago, they were run by a guy who wanted to leave NATO, abolish our nuclear arsenal, and turn the army into a peace corps.
Yeah.
How do you square that one?
Just look at what Keir Starmer's done to the party in the last 3 to 4 years. He's turned it around. National security is now front and centre. And that party now, I would argue, provides the best opportunity for change for the country.
But you've still got a shadow foreign secretary and a shadow Deputy Prime Minister who voted against Trident.
The joys of democracy. People can vote whichever they want.
You're a politician already.
The reality is the nuclear deterrent is absolutely triple locked in by Labour.
Yeah.
There's no question on it. Simple.
So when did you first? Who was it that reached out? Did you reach to them, or did they come to you?
So I've been to talk. When you're in the military, military action is politics by other means.
Yeah.
And so, talking to politicians of various throughout, and working for various politicians, I thought actually, I can probably add some value in this space, and that's why I bring a lot of experience into a relatively new government, and hopefully Labour will use that to the best effect.
Expecting to be fast-tracked up the greasy pole.
So I think you've got to earn your spurs. I absolutely agree. You've got to earn your spurs on that. No fast track, but working in government in any way, shape or form is a real privilege, and I'd be delighted to do so as and when that opportunity comes.
Keir Starmer has pledged to raise defence spending to 2.5% of GDP when the circumstances allow, the economic circumstances allow. You could make the case that the security circumstances need it rather than, the security should come before economy, right?
Well, so I would agree, but the reality is after 14 years of Conservative government, it's very difficult to find that resource to bring it up to 2.5%. So let Labour get in, look at the books, and then work out the trajectory and the timeline, the steady process to get it up to 2.5%.
But isn't that, you've probably been on the receiving end of these defence reviews. They take a long time. Do we really need another defence review, which Labour are saying they're going to do in the autumn, in order to just turn the taps on?
Security and defence review is a must. The various wars going around the world are teaching us that the character of conflict is changing. How we fight those wars are changing. And we've got to take those lessons and inculcate them into our procurement programmes and change defence to make sure it's better suited for the next war.
We had an integrated review less than 2 years ago.
Yeah, we've also been, conflict in Ukraine has transformed the way we fight.
It's been updated. It was updated though by RISHI Sunak. You think it's just another review is needed?
The only thing consistent about change is that change is consistent.
How much have we learned from Ukraine in terms of how far behind we are in terms of warfare? Ukraine and Yemen, in the fact that they're firing 2,000 quid missiles at us and we're replying with $1 million quid worth of kit.
Yeah, so
it's just unsustainable, right?
So unsustainable. There's a requirement to adopt drones and automation and AI into defence, absolutely, and there's bits of that happening already. The question is one of speed and, of course, finance. And so when Labour come in, they conduct a security review. I think there'll be some pretty novel solutions to some really difficult problems. And I think it looks really positive. Labour have said consistently now, and there's no way I would have, 24 years in the military, come to Labour if Labour was weak on national security.
There was an incredible moment, I don't know what day of the week it is anymore, but was it Monday? Where Starmer was lining up with candidates like yourself who have served, and it's sort of unimaginable, really, as I said, 5 years ago.
Demonstrates Keir Starmer's leadership. I mean, the reality is you've now got 14 ex-defence individuals in Labour. That's over 100 years of experience coming into Labour. And that is a fantastic statement both to Keir Starmer's leadership, but more really importantly, that Labour is strong on national security.
Ryan, Labour's tanks on Tory lawns, I mean, just visually, those images on Monday were, very striking. Listening to the now former colonel here talking about Keir Starmer's, national security credentials. This is a big win for Labour, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Defence has always been that strong point. You go back to, over time, the defence has been strategically one of those big policy areas for the Conservatives. But bringing in people like Alistair, if they can project that sort of image and actually make the country think that they are ready for government. And I don't think people would give Labour a hearing if they weren't comfortable with the Labour's position on national security and defence. So the fact they've done that allows them to push ahead with the other policies. And bringing people like Alistair, you can see them going and sort of positioning themselves, in ministerial positions very, very quickly and bringing that experience through.
Alistair, you've been pounding the streets now, for few days. You were selected on, when were you selected last Thursday?
Thursday.
So you left the same day you left the Royal Marines, you were selected?
In the morning, and then I found out on Friday. So.
What's the biggest difference so far? Presumably it's a bit harder to order people to deliver leaflets in quite the same way, is it?
I put more miles in the last 5 days than in the last couple of years in the military.
You could probably carry quite a few leaflets in your backpack, right?
Load me up. I'll tell you what's really interesting for me.
Yeah.
Really broad in the military perspective, some cases. Going around to constituency Selly, hearing people's stories has really broadened me back and brought me back to my humble roots. And it's been fantastic to hear those stories from, I met a guy who's holding down 3 jobs, 7 kids, really struggling. Another business owner whose electricity and water bills have gone through the roof. So hearing these stories and then being able to get after and support them at the local level is going to be absolutely my #1 priority. And then the broader stuff which we're talking about now, defence and national security, absolutely want to get involved in that as well.
You get much stick from your old colleagues? Well,
you get lots of stick. It's fantastic. I love it.
They've been taking a piss of that.
It's great. I'm sure they will after this interview as well.
Listen, that's good luck. Thank you for coming to see us. Come and see us again. I'd love to keep us updated on how the campaign's going.
Thank you.
Best of luck, and thanks for coming on Never Mind The Ballots.
Thank you very much, Harry. Are you going to vote Labour?
We'll cut it there, yeah. With exquisite timing now, I'm joined by the Veterans Minister, Johnny Mercer, also the MP for Plymouth. Johnny, what on earth was the Prime Minister thinking?
Harry, obviously it's a mistake. I think the Prime Minister on these visits, you receive a lot of advice as to what you should and shouldn't be doing. I've spoken to the Prime Minister this morning, and obviously it's disappointing. But I do find, the kind of faux outrage from people who've done nothing but make my life difficult trying to improve veterans affairs over the years pretty nauseating, to be frank.
Yeah, but I don't think you can include Sun readers or indeed the Sun newspaper in that one, and we're pretty
Absolutely
miffed.
not. The Sun has been a staunch ally.
We're pretty miffed
I'm
by
talking about people like Jonathan Ashworth.
We're pretty miffed by the. We're talking about Labour in a moment, but we're pretty miffed by the whole thing. You talk about advisors. Advisors advise. Politicians decide. This is a matter of judgment for the PM now, and he's got this one, as he admits, badly wrong. Should voters be worried about these sort of calls? This is meant to be his job. He's meant to be good at this stuff, isn't he?
I think when it comes to elections, Harry, honestly, and I've spoken to veterans this morning, what people are thinking about is, what is this guy going to do for me and do for my life? And the truth is, Harry, this is a mistake, right? But if you sit there now, this guy has done more on veterans affairs in this country than any of his predecessors. So you have to bear this in context. Otherwise, it's not really fair, okay? He's made a mistake and he has apologized for that. But the truth is, we have redefined what it means to be a veteran in this country and the lived experiences of veterans. So, look, I get the outrage. I get that this is a significant mistake. But let's not lose our heads over this. This guy's done more for veterans than any of his predecessors. That's coming from someone who's campaigned on this for 9 or 10 years and left government pretty frequently over the issue.
Are you not concerned, though, that in one fell swoop he's managed to undo all of that goodwill and all of that work for veterans by appearing to be more concerned about doing an interview about taxes and Labour's policy than spending time with veterans? Lots of these guys, these D-Day veterans are not going to be around for the next landmark D-Day celebration. Surely anyone would have wanted to spend as much time as physically possible with them.
Harry, it's a mistake. It's a significant mistake. But I'm not going to do what everybody seems to do in public life and lose their mind when things like this happen. I think you have to bear it in the context of what has actually happened and the lived experience for veterans over the years. And that has fundamentally changed. And D-Day veterans know that as much as any other, because I've done so many events with the Prime Minister with D-Day veterans over the last 2 weeks. We were in Portsmouth a couple of days ago. So, look, I get the outrage and it's a mistake. It's a significant mistake for which he's apologised. But I'm also not going to sort of join the howls of the fake veteran supporters who suddenly upset that he doesn't treat veterans correctly, because it's not correct, is it? You
said you spoke to the Prime Minister this morning. Is he? How is he?
Yeah, look, he knows this is a mistake, right? And he takes responsibility for everything because he's the Prime Minister. So people make mistakes. That is what has happened here. But I'm clear, as the one in the country who is responsible for veterans affairs. At the same time, he has done more than any of his predecessors, right? And you cannot disaggregate those two facts. So I get the outrage, but and he knows it's a mistake and he's apologized. But we have to bear the stuff in context. Harry, Sun readers will know how difficult it has been to get Veterans Affairs on the policy agenda and to change Veterans Affairs in this country. And it was really difficult until we had someone who actually believed in it. And then he came along and we've changed all this stuff and done all this stuff that the Sun has campaigned on over many, many years. Northern Ireland, prosecutions, mental health pathways, better support for physical injuries. We've done that under this Prime Minister, right? So we need to bear these things in context and take it for what it is.
Are you worried, though, that given this is an election period, that, that hard work is going to go, it's going to be overshadowed by this? I'm just slightly baffled, Johnny, by how, anyone could have seen this one coming.
Well, I mean, yes. I obviously share a lot of that, right? But all I'm saying is that you have to bear this stuff in context, because I'm not, whilst obviously you can imagine how I felt, right, as the Veterans Minister when this happened. But also I see this reaction from people who've done nothing but make my life difficult and not lifted a single finger to help veterans over the years. And it's pretty nauseating. The guy's made a mistake and he's apologized for it. And most veterans are decent people and they know who looks after them and who doesn't. So, people are going to try turn this into a big political moment. It is a significant mistake and I'm not underplaying it. But I think also it should be borne in the context of what we've actually done for veterans.
So look at the context, not the moment. But so RISHI Sunak has signed the veterans, the Help for Heroes Veterans Pledge for this election, which means I think your job or someone's job in cabinet is safe as Veterans Minister, depending on how this interview goes, I suspect, or indeed the result of the election. Labour yet to sign it, as you say. Both parties have been offering sort of packages for veterans. Labour are offering an Armed Forces Covenant, an Armed Forces Commissioner to protect both veterans and the Armed Forces. They're saying that a Keir Starmer government would legislate for that in the first King's speech. Is that not a good idea?
I mean, it belies a basic understanding, right, that veterans are not in the armed forces and they're not armed forces personnel. They're civilians who've left, who need all of government to work for them and specific pathways for things like mental health. In fact, Harry, you've got a clear differentiation there between what we're doing on veterans, and you can see the stuff around things like making sure you don't get penalised for your armed forces compensation scheme or your war pension and your pension credit anymore, making sure that you remove the visa fees for dependents of foreign and Commonwealth personnel. You've got all these practical steps, which are expensive. Some of these cost up to £30 million, right, that are going to fundamentally change what it feels like to be a veteran in the UK. And then there's just, kind of playing to the gallery idea of having an Armed Forces Commission, which I must say no one's ever raised with me in 9 years of campaigning on this. I don't know who's advising them on their veterans policy. I think it's traditional, British politics of saying nice things about veterans and holding their hands for a photograph, and then not even bothering to sort of do the intellectual application of policy that's going to chanch their lives.
I'm not sure it's a day to be throwing around the word bothering when it comes to veterans about anyone else, I'm afraid, Johnny. Though, look, we saw you on the train writing a memo about how, this campaign has been run, how this, too many advisors giving duff advice. What would you be doing if you were running this campaign? What would you be doing to advise the Prime Minister to get out of what is looking like a ginormous hole this morning?
Look, I think we got to focus on what we've done well, right? And
what's that,
Harry? Well, on this veterans piece, I mean, all the stuff I've talked about, right? We have fundamentally changed what it means to be a veterans country. He took the decision to put a veterans minister in his cabinet and to have a separate cabinet office for veterans affairs run by me, which has categorically changed what it feels like to be a veteran in the UK today, running up programs like Op Courage and Op Restore and Op Fortitude that are saving lives every day. So, I think we should focus on that stuff a bit more. I think yesterday, the veterans package we announced is huge. It's the most significant veterans policy in about 25 years. So I think we should focus on what we're doing well and try and avoid mistakes like this.
Johnny, lastly, while I've got you, the polls are all showing that Nigel Farage and Reform are within an ace, really, of overtaking the government and pushing the Tories into third place. What on earth is going on there? How have the government got to a place where they could end up being third in a national election?
Yeah, I mean, it's not good, Harry. I think there's a lot of things going on. I think that there is, I'm out on the doors every day talking to people, and I think there's a lot of apathy. A lot of people are pretty cross. I think there's a kind of disappointment there over what's happened over, since 2019. And the majority we had in 2019, we've been in government for 14 years. But Harry, there is a massive force in all this, and that is that I'm knocking on doors and I can't find people who like Keir Starmer and the Labour Party. So
the Tories aren't going to win this election, though, are they?
I think that we got to fight, right? We got to keep fighting, and ultimately, there'll be a poll on the day, and we'll see what happens. And that's certainly what I'm going to do in Plymouth.
Not exactly a ringing endorsement. Thank you for joining us. Good sport for not cancelling when other politicians, I suspect, would have run a mile this morning. Johnny Mercer, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Brian, we've had two fascinating guests today. I cannot remember a Labour politician speaking so eloquently and, frankly, knowledgeably about defence. They've got an absolute winner there in the Colonel, haven't they?
He's a very, very accomplished candidate. He's got, seems like he's got a fantastic background, and I think that the public where he's going to serve will absolutely warm to him, and he'll be seen as an absolute asset not only to the Labour Party but to Parliament. I think all those contributions that he'll be able to make on big defence issues, and I think
you can imagine the Corbynistas crying into their red hankies when they watch that one. Obviously, Johnny Mercer there, tough wicket. Fair play to him for not cancelling, which I thought other people would, but my God, this is a cock-up by the government, isn't it?
Totally. He has just Johnny Mercer has put his hands up there and just said, we made a mistake. There is absolutely you cannot put a positive spin on this at all. And I think one thing that is interesting, Keir Starmer throughout this campaign has been talking about country first, party second. I think that with Rishi Sunak today, he's put party first, country second.
You know what it reminded me?
Difficult.
You know what it reminded me of? I can't remember a cock-up like this since Theresa May and Grenfell.
Yep.
When she went to visit the firefighters, but she didn't go and see the residents. And you just think, who is advising on that? And even if that is the advice, an astute politician who can think on their feet, is political and has a sort of, good judgment, would have gone, no, I'm going to meet those people over there.
On a basic common sense level, if you know the United States President, Emmanuel Macron, are going to be there, you are just with them. You mark them step by step.
And call me old-fashioned, but can't see someone like Boris Johnson, Nigel Farage doing this. It's a mess. Talking of Nigel Farage, I've written about him today, and it was his statement that said there's something happening out there. In his return speech, there's something happening out there, and I haven't heard people use that phrase. Well, in fact, I've heard people use that phrase before, but I heard them use it in 2019 when Boris Johnson was on the cusp of his 2019 sweeping 80-seat majority, blowing up the red wall. People were coming back from the front and saying there's something happening out there. The other time I heard it used was in 2016 when a Northern Labour MP came back to Westminster and said there's something happening out there and Leave are going to win. Ignore the polls. Farage is quite a self-aggrandising person. He's turned down suitcases full of money to be on the Trump campaign or involved in the Trump campaign. He's benched himself from his very well-paid TV gig for 7 weeks. If he says there's something happening out there, Ryan, should we listen?
Absolutely. Nigel Farage, he gets what the public are saying, what they're feeling and what they're thinking. And he will try and use that and channel that into the political movement that he's trying for at that particular time. And that's exactly what he's doing. We're very nearly at a crossover point.
Well, I was going to say, we've seen in 4 polls overnight, we've seen the sort of Farage surge, the reform bump. One of them was within 2 points of the Tories. Rishi Sunak, on the back of this D-Day disaster, if that flip happens, what happens to the Tory camp? What happens to the MPs?
I think there'll be absolute chaos, and I think very quickly you move on from Rishi Sunak just almost abandoning this campaign, and the Tory party just concentrate on what happens next. All that positioning and all the leaders.
There was that 2017 moment where Theresa May ran the initial campaign as a very presidential style. It was Theresa May's Conservatives. She was front and centre. Do you think we might see a pivot to seeing more people other than Rishi Sunak?
You could do, but I think it's just too late. I think anything they do, who are they going to throw out that can change the dial? It's just not happening.
Ryan, get some sleep. It's been a long week. Never mind the ballots. Election countdown will be back on Monday. But first, as we do at the end of every show, let's see what Ed Davey's been doing. He's been grilling. With a big Union Jack mitt and a king of the grill. I mean, the fact he seems to have someone advising him over his shoulder on how to barbecue suggests that he has never done this before. But unbelievable. It's always a way that, just any barbecue, men gather. And there we have as well. Ed Davey on his grand tour of doing nice and amusing things that make him look, you be the judge of that. We'll be back for more grillings next week. Never mind the ballots, back very soon. Don't forget to subscribe, youtube.com/@sunelection to get the videos first. Thank you to all my guests today, all my guests this week. It's been a long one. See you on Monday.